Hey there friends, I was reached out to by a publishing company, 6th and Spring Books, for Megan Kreiner's newest crochet book. It'll be coming out in March of next year, I believe. I think they said that it's available at Joann's and Michael's, but it will be available worldwide, Amazon, etc. in March. And so they sent me the book and they wanted me to review it. Originally, my plan was to do one pattern completely how they suggested it with the yarn they suggested, everything, and then I was going to do a second pattern using more familiar yarns, if that makes sense. This is not a paid promotion. They did say that they wanted me to be as honest as I possibly could, so that's what I'm going to do. I want to be honest and I want to be truthful. Please remember that this is my opinion and that I don't want this to be the end all be all. I don't work with a lot of other people's patterns too frequently. I would like to, but as a pattern developer myself, I definitely don't want anybody thinking that, you know, I'm stealing their techniques or I'm stealing their patterns to make my own. I believe that we can all work together and all create together and grow together as crochet artists. So the book that they sent me is Baby Beasts to Crochet, Cute Amigurumi Creatures from Myth and Legends. I believe it comes with almost 20 plushies that you can crochet. And so the one that I did was the Kitsune. I want to, show this little guy off. So we're going to do a quick little breakdown real quick of my plushie and what I learned from this. So the pattern suggests that it's an optional thing. Unfortunately, it is not really optional for floral wire. As you can see, my head is really wobbly. The tails are very heavy and wobbly. It said to stuff halfway, and that's what I did. I followed the instructions to a T. So we'll start off by breaking down the pattern. And so the yarn that they suggest is not something that I've ever heard before. I talked to my aunt who's been crocheting for 50 years. She said that it's an Italian yarn. I did my research because, like I said, for the first project, I wanted to do exactly the yarn they suggested. I had a very difficult time trying to find it and trying to find it affordably. I had to go to 4 or 5 different online shops that had yarn. It was impossible to find all of the colors in stock in the amounts I needed. Eventually, I just had to break down and I used yarn that was familiar to me. I was very lucky that for Christmas, a couple of my friends got me either the yarn I needed or they gave me a gift card so that I could buy the yarn. And that was very frustrating. So when I was doing the research, it broke down to about $160 for the yarn and just the yarn. This wasn't for the safety eyes that I also had to special order. I didn't do any of the floral wire. And if you're making this for a child or for your grandchild, it's not affordable and it's not feasible if you're wanting it to be faux fur, because all of these have faux fur yarn in them. While I love the idea of it, I don't love the execution. Like I said, I went to 4 or 5 different websites. I even went to the manufacturer's website for the base yarn. They just sent me to other specialty yarn websites that, are mom and pop shops, so they don't sell online. You have to go in store. And unfortunately, in my area, it's not easily accessible to me. I don't have, my closest yarn store that is a mom and pop shop is literally a 40-minute drive for me. So if you are on a budget or you are in a craftland wasteland, it's not feasible. I really wanted to love this and I wanted to love the idea of it, but it was very frustrating to try to find the yarn. So I did eventually break down and I bought stuff from Amazon. That being said, they only provided the book when they sent it, and that's fine. But expecting me to spend $160 for a review is kind of frustrating. I appreciate the opportunity, but I don't like the execution. So after I decided to just use the yarn I already had on hand and then get the yarn that my friends purchased for me, thank you guys, it was still over $70 in yarn for one project. So if you're expecting to use this, I'm not saying to use other people's patterns to make money off of. They and I work very hard to create our patterns. People do buy these crochet books to make the plushies and then sell those plushies. This book is not for that. This book is definitely for creating your favorite characters from myths and legends and sticking it on a shelf. I can guarantee, even though I do have a pretty wide fan base, I can't guarantee that I'm going to get $400 for this plushie. 30 hours of work on top of, you know, $70 in yarn. I can't justify that. I can't justify asking anybody to spend that. So that's my thoughts on the yarn. I went through and I followed the pattern. It was very confusingly written. I haven't purchased any of Megan Kreiner's other books. I would like to, maybe eventually. Like I said, I don't buy a bunch of books. I have 3. I had just started on the pattern and I got to the muzzle. So it starts with the head. One thing that confused the heck out of me and I feel like was unfinished, again, in my opinion, it stops at what is essentially the third to last row on the top of the head. It essentially leaves like a skull cap. So like where my hair is just open, and that's where you're supposed to stuff in, but there's also an opening on the muzzle, which is the next part of that pattern. So I thought that was very odd to leave 2 openings open, if that makes sense. It was, again, very frustrating because I went through the rest of the pattern. Even before I finished before I started surface crocheting all of the yarn on, which I will talk about in a second, all of that surface crochet, it was still open. The skull was still, the head was still open, and it was very confusing because I'm like, where am I supposed to close this? Before I started surface crocheting, I stuffed the head just a little bit further, and I did the standard 6 or single crochet decrease to 12 stitches, and then the 6 decrease to finish it off. And like I said, it was just very frustrating to have to figure that out on my own. And although I am an intermediate crochet artist, and I had my aunt look over the pattern because I was like, am I crazy? Is this written correctly and I'm just reading it wrong? And even she was confused. Along with this surface crocheting, I feel like it would have been a lot easier for some of the parts, like the body and the tails and the legs, the upper legs. Like as you can see, the lower legs are not fur, but the upper legs are. I feel like we should have just been told to crochet with both our regular yarn and our faux fur yarn at the same time. 1, to save us time, and 2, to save us a headache, essentially. Because like I said, I did 12 hours of surface crocheting, like 12 hours. And my partner's like, do you just want to put it down for a little bit? I was like, no, I want it done. If I put it down, I'm not gonna finish it. And that's on me. But it was very frustrating because the pattern tells you to put everything together and then to start surface crocheting. It would have saved a lot of time and effort to just crochet with that at the same time. Especially if you're not well versed in surface crochet, it can be very difficult and very time consuming. Like I said, 12 hours just of surface crochet. Also in the pattern, there were some translations or abbreviations that were not included in the beginning of the book. And there was a lot of back and forth for me. Like I would go to the page that I was on in the pattern, and then I would get confused by a section. I would go to the front and go between, you know, the materials you need, as well as the abbreviations and the stitches, and I would still be stuck, and I would be very frustrated and confused. And if I'm frustrated and confused, I know that there are going to be a lot of either beginner or novice and into intermediate crocheters that are not going to be happy with it, and they're going to give up in the middle of the project, and I don't want that for them. I am not one to just set aside a project and just leave it. I have to finish it. One translation or abbreviation that was very difficult for me to like translate, eventually I did it, was the capital BR lowercase LPS. I believe that is back loops or background loops. Again, and it's not in the rest of the pattern. It's not in any of the other patterns. that I saw, because I did just a quick glance. Because originally I was going to do the Kitsune kit, and I was going to do the Jackalope kit. I was like, I finished this one, and I was like, I'm done. And again, that's my opinion. It was just a very frustrating process for me, and I don't want to, I didn't want to keep being frustrated at this, because again, I do want to like this pattern book, and I do want to appreciate it, and I want to appreciate Megan's hard work that she put into it. I can see that there's a lot of love and a lot of appreciation for these creatures. I don't want her thinking that I just hate this. I just want these criticisms to be taken and hopefully taken to heart and improved upon. Like, I don't want to see her fail. And again, I don't want to see people being like, oh, I don't want to buy that book at all. Try it. You know, there's no harm in at least trying it. Worst case scenario, you just keep the receipt. But like I said, there was a lot of flipping back and forth. So in the pattern, I will show you one page. So as you can see, there are no pictures here to show you how the pieces are supposed to look or how you're supposed to attach them. It is, like I said, so there's the one, like the showing off how that looks. My plushie does not look like this. And I didn't expect like the head markings to look that way, but it should look somewhat close to that. And mine doesn't. Mine's not good. And that's on me. But there's no pictures in here. It tells you to go back and keep going back and forth to these. And in my opinion, like I said, this is all my opinion. In my opinion, I feel like those drawings or even just pictures showing how those pieces are supposed to be attached should be in that section. So like if we're talking about sewing the muzzle closed, because these two pieces are white and orange and you sew them closed and then you attach the nose, I feel like that picture should be in right after the bottom of the muzzle. But I do feel like that works a lot better, especially because people don't want to be flipping back and forth. They have their hands full of yarn and crochet hooks. It also said that I would need 3 skeins of the ivory yarn and 4 skeins of the orange. It's called Spice, I believe. I ended up needing to use all 4 of the ivory that I had bought, and I had only used 2 of the orange, or like the Spice. So I feel like being told to spend $15 on a skein of yarn and telling me the wrong amount is kind of silly, because then I'm spending more money than I need. Or if I didn't buy the right amount and I'm like, oh, I only need two skeins of the ivory, and it turns out I need 3 or 4, I'm stuck waiting to get more in again, because I can't just go to the yarn store. I can't go to the bead place and get the yarn that I need because they don't have it, or they don't have it in stock. They don't carry a lot of it. Especially with these specialty yarn stores, they only keep like 3 or 4 skeins of that color on hand, because yarn's expensive and wholesaling it is also very expensive. I do think I mentioned this before, but in the pattern it says that the floral yarn or floral wire is optional. As you saw before, it's not really optional. You should buy that, because it seems really silly and it's really goofy to be told that it's an optional thing when it really isn't. It's a necessity for that pattern. The other thing that I did want to mention is the Kitsune kit, and I frogged it like 4 or 5 times on each leg, and it just didn't add up. The legs, the back legs specifically, are backwards. So instead of like a fox leg where it's like the knee, ankle, whatever is right here, it's flipped and is like this. So the paw is here. And so it looks more like a human leg rather than a fox leg. And again, that was very frustrating and very confusing for me. This might just be because I don't work with a lot of crochet books or other crochet artists. I kind of do my own thing, change it up when people bring up their concerns with my pattern. That being said, I do really like this book, and it is very cute. I think if I do any other patterns, I'm going to do my own thing. Again, because it says to back loop everything, you only crochet in the back loop for most of it, or you only crochet in the front loop for most of it, so that you have those loops to surface crochet that fur on. My advice is to just regular crochet, like the single stitches or single crochet, and work with your regular yarn and the fur yarn at the same time, because it's going to save you time, it's going to save you effort, it's going to save you frustration. I can't tell you how many times yesterday that I was holding the plushie like this and spinning him so that I could spin the tail around and surface crochet on it. It was quite the sight, guys. That being said, if you do have the opportunity to buy this book by Megan Kreiner or any of her other works, definitely do it. Form your own opinion. This is just my opinion, and you know, I'm very brash and I'm very forward. I've been told that by a lot of people, so like I definitely like to preface stuff with that. But again, it is a very cute book, and it is like, I really want to make the Kelpie. There's like a phoenix in here. Like I want to make those, but emotionally right now I'm just kind of fried, and part of it is because of the holidays. This was definitely a lot more mental work than I really feel should be necessary for intermediate crocheters. But this is definitely something that you work your way up to if you are a beginner or a novice. I would definitely not suggest this book if you are a beginner or you see it and you're like, oh my god, that's so cute, I want to get started crocheting, I want to learn how to crochet, I want to do this. I would not. Personally, if I were starting out, this will definitely wear you down and get you frustrated enough that you don't want to do it. And you will stop crocheting. And crocheting is a great hobby and is a great way to relieve stress and create great gifts for people. But I myself would not be making these for my younger cousins or my nephews or my nieces. Like, it's not for me. I would not be making this for these guys, because $170 in yarn and 30 hours working and then giving it to the kiddo and they rip out the safety eyes and tear it apart, I would just cease. I would explode into the ether. That being said, at least give it a try and try it out for yourself before just taking my opinion at face value. Again, because I don't feel like my opinion should be the end all be all. So I hope that helps. I hope that is a decent insight into the baby beasts to crochet, and hopefully maybe like you'll get one of her other books, because I saw some of her other books are really cute. I just, again, don't have a lot of scratch to be spending on expensive specialty yarn. And I think it was probably, and this is my opinion again, they probably had a contract with those companies to use this yarn specifically for this book. So I can't fault them too much for that, but expecting college kids and teenagers and, you know, grandmas and stuff, like those are the people that are usually crocheting. Expecting them to spend $170 or ask their parents to spend $170 for them just for yarn is very entitled, and that's what I'm going to say about that. So I hope this is helpful. I hope this is insightful. I hope you give it a chance in March when it comes out. So I think it's March 24th. I could be wrong. It's sometime in March 2024. So thank you guys for listening to me ramble.